The ranch was dying in silence. Caleb Rourke stood in a frozen yard at dawn, staring at the paper nailed to the bunkhouse door. The foreclosure notice flapped in the wind, its edges already curling from the cold. 9 days. That's all the bank had given him. 9 days until everything his father built, everything Caleb had bled for, would belong to someone else. Christmas was 5 days away. Not that it mattered. The cattle were gaunt, ribs showing through dull hides. The windmill creaked with every gust, one blade cracked clean through. The well pump groaned each time he worked the handle, metal grinding against metal like it was begging to quit. Caleb understood the feeling. But quitting early felt worse than losing slowly, so he worked. Dark to dark. Fence posts. Feed bags. Anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from counting days. The land stretched out around him, brown and brittle under a gray sky. It used to mean something. Now it just felt like a weight he couldn't put down. He'd made a decision 3 weeks ago. A desperate one. The kind you make when loneliness becomes another debt you can't pay. He'd placed an ad in the territorial paper. Land. Roof. Future. Simple words for a complicated lie. He hadn't mentioned the rot underneath. Hadn't mentioned the bank or the debt or the buyer circling like a crow waiting for something to die. Harlan Pike. Cash-rich and patient. Pike had made an offer twice already, each time with that smile that said he knew how this would end. Caleb had refused both times, but the third offer was coming. He could feel it. The stage was due today. Caleb walked to the barn, boots crunching through frost. Inside, the air smelled of old hay and rust. He checked the horses, fed what little grain he had left, then stood there in the dim light trying to figure out what to say to a woman who thought she was coming to a working ranch instead of a graveyard. By noon, he was waiting at the edge of town. The wind bit through his coat. Other men stood nearby, waiting for freight or family. Caleb kept to himself. When the stage finally rolled in, dust rising behind it, his chest tightened. The door opened. The woman who stepped down wasn't what he'd imagined. She didn't look like hope or rescue or any of the things he'd let himself picture in weak moments. She looked tired. Her coat was patched at the elbows, her boots scuffed and worn. She carried one trunk herself, and didn't wait for the driver or anyone else to help. She set it down and looked at him. "I'm Mave Collins," she said. Her voice was flat, cautious. No warmth. No expectation. "I suppose you're Caleb." He nodded. Stepped forward. Took the trunk without a word. It was heavier than it should have been, packed tight with whatever life she'd brought with her. They rode back in silence. Mave sat beside him on the wagon, hands folded in her lap, eyes scanning the horizon. Caleb tried to see the ranch the way she must be seeing it. The sagging fence line. The empty corrals. The forge by the barn, cold and red with rust. The shed with half its roof caved in. She didn't say anything. Just looked. The way someone looks at a wound before deciding how deep it goes. When they reached the house, Caleb carried her trunk inside. The cabin was clean but bare. He'd done what he could. It wasn't enough. Mave stood in the doorway, taking it all in. "Thank you," she said quietly. Caleb nodded and left her alone. That night, he would tell her the truth. Caleb waited until after supper to tell her. They sat across from each other at the small table, tin plates between them. He'd cooked what he could, beans, hard bread, coffee that tasted like burnt wood. Mave ate without comment. She hadn't unpacked. Hadn't asked questions. Just moved through the evening like someone conserving energy for whatever came next. The lamp flickered between them. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Caleb set down his cup. "There's something you need to know," he said. Mave looked at him. Waited. The ranch is failing, he said. It has been 2 years. Drought took the grass. Lost half the herd. Couldn't pay the hands, so they left. Couldn't fix what broke. The bank gave me until the 28th. 9 days from now. After that, it's foreclosure. He watched her face. She didn't flinch. Didn't look away. There's a man, Caleb continued. Harlan Pike. He's been waiting for this. He'll buy it from the bank for half what it's worth, and turn it into part of his empire. He's been patient. He knows I'm drowning. Maeve's hands wrapped tighter around her cup. You should have said, she said finally. Her voice was calm, but something sharp lived underneath it. In the ad. In the letters. You should have told me. You wouldn't have come. I still might not have, she said. But at least I'd have known what I was walking into. Caleb felt the shame rise in his chest. She was right. He'd lied by omission. Brought her here under false pretenses because he was too proud to admit the truth and too desperate to face it alone. I'm sorry, he said. Mave stood. Carried her plate to the basin. Stood there with her back to him, looking out the dark window at nothing. What were you hoping for? She asked. That I'd fix it. That a wife would somehow make the debt disappear. I don't know, Caleb said. I wasn't thinking straight. Haven't been for a while. She turned. Her eyes were hard now, no softness left. I came here because I had nowhere else to go, she said. My father died 6 months ago. The shop went to creditors. I had a trunk, $40, and no family. Your ad promised something stable. A partnership. That's what you called it in the letter. Partnership. Caleb remembered writing that word. It had felt true at the time. Now it just felt like another lie. I meant it, he said. Did you? Mave crossed her arms. Or did you just need someone to witness the end? The words hit harder than he expected. Maybe because they were true. Maybe he had wanted someone else there when it all finally collapsed. Someone to share the weight of losing. I don't know what I wanted, Caleb admitted. But I know what I need. I need to save this place. And I can't do it alone. Mave studied him. The lamplight carved shadows across her face. She looked older than her years. Worn down by something deeper than travel. I'm not a miracle, she said. I can work. I'm good with my hands. But I can't save a sinking ship with 9 days and no tools. I know. Then why am I here? Caleb didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound selfish. Mave sighed. Sit back down. I'll stay through Christmas, she said. After that, if this place goes under, we figure out what's next. Separately or together. But no more lies. If we're doing this, we do it honestly. Caleb nodded. Honest, he said. They sat in silence. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the lamp burned low. Neither of them knew if 9 days was enough time to save anything. But the terms were set. Morning would come early. Caleb woke before dawn to the sound of metal on metal. He lay still for a moment, disoriented. The cabin was cold, the fire burned down to embers. The sound came again, a deliberate strike, clear and rhythmic. He pulled on his boots and coat and stepped outside. The sky was still dark, stars fading at the edges. Smoke rose from the forge. Caleb crossed the yard. The forge glowed orange in the pre-dawn light, heat wavering in the frozen air. Mave stood at the anvil, hammer in hand, striking a piece of iron that glowed white-hot. She'd rolled up her sleeves despite the cold. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She didn't look up when he approached. What are you doing? he asked. "Working," she said. She lifted the iron with tongs, examined it, then thrust it back into the coals. The bellows wheezed as she pumped air into the fire. Sparks flew upward into the dark. Caleb looked around. She'd cleaned the forge. The tools that had been scattered and rusted were now organized on a bench she must have dragged from the shed. The firebox had been rebuilt with brick she'd scavenged from somewhere. The coal pile, which he'd thought was too damp to burn, was now feeding a steady flame. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. "Since 4. Mave." "I'm a blacksmith," she said, cutting him off. She pulled the iron out again and laid it on the anvil. The hammer came down hard, shaping the metal with quick, precise blows. "My father ran a shop outside Cheyenne. Trained me from the time I could lift a hammer. When the railroad came through, they built their own smithy. Undercut his prices. He died trying to compete." She struck again. The metal bent to her will. "I kept the shop going for 2 years after," she continued. "Did everything. Horseshoes, tools, wagon repairs. But a woman running a forge, people didn't trust it. It didn't matter how good the work was. They took their business elsewhere. Eventually, I couldn't pay the rent." Caleb watched her work. Every movement was practiced, efficiently. No wasted motion. She wasn't experimenting. She knew exactly what she was doing. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Mave finally stopped. Set down the hammer, looked at him. "You didn't ask what I could do," she said. "You asked if I'd come. So I came." The word sat between them. Caleb felt something shift in his chest, pride, maybe, or shame. He'd been so focused on his own failure that he hadn't considered what she might bring beyond companionship. He'd expected a wife. Not an answer. "What are you making?" he asked. "Hinge pins," Mave said. "Saw half the doors in this place hanging crooked. Figured I'd start there. After that, I'll fix the well pump. Then the windmill bearing. Then whatever else is broken." She picked up the hammer again. "People pay for good ironwork," she said. "Farmers need plow blades sharpened, tools repaired. Teamsters need axles fixed. There's a market here, Caleb. You've just been too busy trying to run a cattle ranch to see it." Caleb stared at her. "At the forge. At the work already done in the few hours since midnight. We have 9 days," he said. "Then we'd better not waste them." She turned back to the anvil and struck. The sound rang out across the empty yard, sharp and sure. A declaration. The ranch had been silent for so long that the noise felt like something waking up. Caleb stood there another moment, then went to the barn. If she was going to work, so was he. He had fences to mend, tools to sharpen, accounts to organize. If they were going to fail, they'd fail working. But maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't fail at all. The sun broke over the horizon, and the forge burned bright. They fell into a rhythm that felt more like survival than partnership. Mave worked the forge from dawn until her hands cramped. Caleb hauled wood, cut fence posts, patched the barn roof where winter had torn through. They moved around each other like strangers sharing a lifeboat, careful, efficient, conserving words for when they mattered. By the second day, a farmer named Dietrich showed up with a broken plow blade. "Heard there's a smith working out here," he said, eyeing Mave with open skepticism. "There is," Mave said. She took the blade, examined the crack, and quoted a price. Dietrich hesitated. Looked at Caleb. "She knows what she's doing," Caleb said. The farmer paid half up front. Came back the next afternoon. The blade was fixed, not just welded, but reinforced, the edge rehardened and sharpened to a clean line. Dietrich tested it with his thumb, nodded slowly, and paid the rest. I'll mention it to others, he said. Word spread the way it does in a sparse country, slow, but certain. A teamster brought a bent wagon axle. A rancher needed horseshoes. A woman from town came with a broken door latch and left with 2 new ones, better than the original. Mave charged fair rates, not cheap ones. People paid. Some came back with more work. Caleb kept a ledger. Wrote down every job, every payment. The numbers climbed, but not fast enough. He did the math each night by lamplight, subtracting what they owed from what they'd made. The gap was still too wide. On the 4th day, Harlan Pike rode up. Caleb was hauling scrap iron to the forge when he saw the horse, a tall bay gelding, groomed and expensive. Pike sat easy in the saddle, hat tilted back, smiling like he'd come to watch something amusing. Heard you've got a forge running, Pike said. He dismounted, looped the reins over the fence. Interesting choice. Caleb set down the iron. Mave kept working, hammer striking steady behind him. We're busy, Caleb said. Pike walked closer, hands in his pockets. He was younger than Caleb, cleaner, well-fed. Everything about him said money and patience. The bank'll take this place in 5 days, Pike said. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. I'll buy it after. Save yourself the embarrassment, Caleb. Sell to me now. I'll give you enough to start over somewhere else. We're not selling. Pike's smile widened. You think a few horseshoes are going to cover what you owe? Behind them, Mave's hammer went silent. Pike turned, noticing her for the first time. His eyes moved over her, the soot on her face, the leather apron, the hammer in her hand. Didn't figure you for a working woman, he said. Mave set the hammer down deliberately. Walked forward until she stood beside Caleb. She looked at Pike with the same expression she'd used to evaluate bad metal. Didn't figure you for anything useful, she said. Pike's smile faltered, then returned harder. Cute, he said. He looked at Caleb. Do you think this changes anything? You're playing for survival. I'm offering you a way out. We don't need your way out, Caleb said. You will, Pike said. He walked back to his horse, swung up into the saddle. 5 days, Caleb. Then it's not your choice anymore. He rode off slowly, like a man with all the time in the world. Caleb's hands were fists at his sides. The old anger was back, the kind that made him want to swing first and think later. The kind that had gotten him into trouble before. Mave touched his arm. Just once. Light. He's trying to rattle you, she said. Don't let him. Caleb breathed. Nodded. They went back to work. That night, the ledger showed progress. Not enough. But progress. 4 days left. By Christmas Eve, Caleb was running on anger and coffee that tasted like dirt. He hadn't slept more than 4 hours in the past 3 nights. Every muscle ached. His hands were raw from work, knuckles split from cold and friction. The ledger sat open on the table, numbers that refused to add up to salvation. They'd made money, more than he'd thought possible in 5 days, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. The debt was a wall they kept throwing themselves against. Mave sat across from him, steam rising from her own cup. Her face was drawn, shadows under her eyes. She'd been working 18-hour days at the forge, barely stopping to eat. Her hands were bandaged where blisters had opened and bled. We're short, Caleb said. He didn't need to say how much. They both knew. I know. Outside, the wind howled. Christmas morning, the bank would come. The law would come. It would all be over. Mave set down her cup. There's the Christmas market, she said. Caleb looked up. What? Red Bluff. They hold a market on Christmas Eve. Runs until midnight. People come from 3 counties. Ranchers, miners, families. They buy gifts, supplies, and specialty goods. She paused. Ironwork. Caleb shook his head. That's 50 miles. We'd need to leave now. And there's a stall fee. Transport costs. If we don't sell. If we don't go, Mave interrupted, we lose quiet. At least this way, we go down fighting. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was too risky, too desperate. But what did they have left except desperate? What would you bring? He asked. Mave stood. Walked to the corner where she'd been stacking finished work. She pulled back a tarp. Underneath were pieces Caleb hadn't seen. Custom iron latches with decorative scrollwork. A plow blade she'd hardened using some technique he didn't understand, the metal dark and strong. A gate hinge shaped like cottonwood leaves, detailed and beautiful. Hooks, hinges, tools, all of it crafted with a precision that went beyond utility. When did you make these? Caleb asked. Nights, Mave said. After you went to sleep. He looked at her, at the exhaustion carved into her face, the determination that kept her upright. She'd been working while he slept. Building inventory for a gamble she hadn't even mentioned until now. Why didn't you say something? Because you would have told me not to waste time on fancy pieces, Mave said. You would have said we needed to focus on practical work. And you would have been right. But practical work wasn't going to get us there, Caleb. We needed something more. She was right. He would have said exactly that. If this fails, Caleb said slowly, we lose faster. We'll have nothing left. If we don't try, Mave said, we lose anyway. At least this way, we're in control. Caleb looked at the pieces again. They were good. Better than good. The kind of work people would stop to admire. The kind they'd pay premium prices for. He nodded. We'll need the wagon. Blankets to wrap the pieces. Food for the trip. Already packed, Mave said. Of course she had. They loaded the wagon by lamplight, working quickly despite the fatigue. Every piece wrapped carefully, secured against the journey. The horses sensed the urgency, stamping and blowing steam into the frozen air. By the time they were ready, it was past midnight. Christmas Eve had arrived. They had 1 day left. Caleb climbed up onto the wagon seat. Mave sat beside him, the wrapped ironwork stacked behind them like hopes made solid. He snapped the reins. The wagon rolled forward into the darkness, leaving the dying ranch behind. Ahead, 50 miles of frozen road. Behind, everything they couldn't afford to lose. The horses pulled steady. The stars wheeled overhead. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Either this worked, or it didn't. They reached Red Bluff as dawn broke cold and pale over the mountains. The town was already stirring. Wagons lined the main street, vendors setting up stalls under makeshift canopies. The smell of roasting meat and pine smoke filled the air. Families moved through the early light, bundled against the cold, voices carrying in the stillness. Caleb paid the stall fee, money they couldn't spare, and they claimed a spot near the center of the market. Not a prime location, but visible. Mave unwrapped the pieces while Caleb built a display frame from spare lumber. They worked in silence, hands numb, breath misting. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, they were ready. The ironwork sat arranged on rough wooden shelves, functional pieces in front, decorative ones elevated to catch the eye. The plow blade. The latches. The cottonwood hinge. Everything Mave had poured herself into during those sleepless nights. People walked past. Some glanced. Most didn't stop. An hour passed. Then 2. Caleb felt the familiar weight of failure settling over him. They'd gambled everything on this. 50 miles. The stall fee. Time they didn't have. And people were walking past like the work was invisible. Mave stood quiet beside him, face unreadable. Then a rancher stopped. Older man, weathered face, hands like leather. He picked up one of the latches, turned it over, and tested the weight. "Who made this?" he asked. "I did," Mave said. The rancher looked at her. Back at the latch. He set it down, picked up another piece. Examined the weld, the finish. "Good work," he said. "How much?" Mave quoted a price. The rancher nodded and paid without haggling. Others started to notice. A woman stopped to look at the decorative hinge. A teamster examined the reinforced hooks. A store owner from the next county over asked about the plow blade, wanting to know the hardening technique. Word moved through the market the way it had moved through the county, person to person, quiet but certain. By midday, they'd sold half the inventory. Mave's hands never stopped moving, wrapping purchases, making change, answering questions about custom orders. Caleb handled the money, kept track of sales, his mind calculating constantly. The numbers were climbing. Actually climbing. A standing order came from a mercantile owner for door hardware. A mining company foreman wanted 20 custom hooks. A woman commissioned a set of fireplace tools. The sun moved overhead. The crowd thickened. Then Caleb saw him. Harlan Pike stood at the edge of the market, watching. He wasn't alone, 2 men flanked him, dressed too well for ranch work. Pike's eyes moved over the crowd, the stall, the diminishing inventory. He was counting. Calculating. That smile was gone. Caleb felt Mave tense beside him. She'd seen him too. A buyer approached, a rancher Caleb recognized from the southern valley. He held up the cottonwood hinge, examining the detail. "Who made this?" the rancher asked. Caleb opened his mouth. Stopped. The words he'd always used, the careful deflections, the vague answers that protected his pride, sat on his tongue like ash. He looked at Mave. At her bandaged hands. To the exhaustion she wore like armor. At everything she'd given to keep his ranch alive. "She did," Caleb said. His voice carried across the stall. "Every piece here. She's a blacksmith. This ranch stands because of her." Mave's head turned. Something flickered across her face, surprise, then something deeper. Something that had been locked away. The rancher nodded, impressed. "I'll take 3 of these. Can you make more?" "I can," Mave said quietly. The sale was made. Others followed. Pike watched from the shadows, his certainty cracking. By dusk, they'd sold everything. The shelves were empty. The lockbox was full. Orders for future work were written in Caleb's ledger, weeks of guaranteed income. Mave counted the money twice. Looked at Caleb. "It's enough," she said. Caleb nodded. Couldn't speak. The relief was too large. They packed the wagon as night fell. Christmas lights glowed in the windows. Somewhere, church bells rang. They drove through the night, neither willing to stop. The wagon wheels creaked over frozen ground. Stars scattered overhead like thrown silver. Caleb held the reins loose, letting the horses set their own pace. Beside him, Mave sat wrapped in a blanket, the lockbox on her lap. She hadn't let it out of her sight since they'd left Red Bluff. Neither of them slept. Too much adrenaline. Too much fear that if they stopped moving, something would go wrong. That the money would disappear. That the bank would foreclose early. That Pike would find some way to take it all. They reached the ranch as dawn broke on Christmas morning. The house looked the same, weathered, sagging, half-broken. But something felt different. Maybe it was them. Maybe survival changed how you saw things. Caleb unhitched the horses while Mave carried the lockbox inside. When he entered, she had the money spread on the table, counting it a third time. Making sure. "It's all here," she said. "Every dollar." Caleb sat down heavily. His body ached in ways he'd forgotten were possible. But the ache felt earned now. Honest. "The bank opens at 9, he said. "I know." They sat in silence as the light grew. Outside, the ranch woke slowly, cattle lowing, wind moving through broken boards, the windmill creaking its steady complaint. All the sounds of a place that refused to die. At 8:30, they rode into town. The bank was a square brick building that had always felt like a courthouse to Caleb. A place of judgment. He and Mave walked in together, the lockbox between them. The banker, a thin man named Garrison, looked up from his desk. Surprise crossed his face when he saw them. "Mr. Rourke," he said. "I wasn't expecting you until later." "We're here to settle the debt," Caleb said. Garrison's eyebrows rose. He glanced at Mave, then back to Caleb. "The full amount?" "The full amount." They counted it out on his desk. Every bill, every coin. Garrison verified it twice, his expression shifting from doubt to something like respect. When he was satisfied, he pulled out the paperwork. "This clears your debt in full," he said. He stamped the documents, signed them, slid them across the desk. "The ranch is yours, free and clear." Caleb took the papers. They felt heavier than they should have. Lighter than he'd feared. Outside, Mave stopped on the boardwalk. She looked at him. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it." She nodded slowly. Something released in her shoulders, tension she'd been holding for days, maybe longer. They rode back in silence. When they reached the ranch, Caleb walked to the bunkhouse and tore down the foreclosure notice. The nails came out easy. The paper crumpled in his fist. He threw it into the forge pit where Mave had built her first fire. Inside the cabin, they made coffee. Real coffee this time, not the burnt substitute Caleb had been stretching. They sat at the table with the papers between them, proof of ownership, proof of survival. "What now?" Mave asked. Caleb looked at her. At this woman who'd arrived a week ago expecting stability and found ruins instead. Who'd rebuilt a forge in the dark. Who'd worked until her hands bled. Who'd gambled everything on a Christmas market because quiet defeat wasn't acceptable. "Now we work," he said. "The forge has orders. The ranch needs repairs. Spring will bring more cattle if we can afford them. It won't be easy." "It hasn't been easy," Mave said. "No," Caleb agreed. "It hasn't." She smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It changed her face completely. "It's not easy," she said. They drank their coffee. Outside, the forge sat cold but ready. The ranch stood damaged but standing. The debt was gone, but the labor remained. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better. It was a beginning built on truth. Winter settled in after Christmas, slow and deliberate. The ranch didn't transform overnight. The fences still sagged. The windmill still needed a new blade. The barn roof leaked when it snowed. But the work felt different now, not desperate scrambling against collapse, but deliberate building toward something that might last. Mave kept the forge running. Orders came in steadily, carried by word that spread through the county like roots finding water. She made tools, hinges, and repaired wagon parts. Caleb worked beside her when he could, hauling coal, organizing supplies, keeping the books. The rest of the time, he mended what was broken. Fixed the well pump. Shored up fence posts. Cleared snow from the barn. They worked hard. Slept hard. Spoke when words were needed. The mercantile order came through, custom door hardware that took Mave 3 weeks to complete. The mining company sent payment up front for the hooks, then doubled the order. A rancher in 2 counties overcommissioned a set of gates. The money came in. Not floods, but steady. Enough to buy feed. Enough to pay for lumber. Enough to breathe. Pike rode by once more in late January. He sat on his horse at the property line, looking at the smoke rising from the forge, at Caleb working on the fence. He didn't say anything. Just sat there for a long moment, then turned his horse and rode away. He didn't come back. By February, the ranch had settled into a rhythm. Mave worked the forge 5 days a week, taking custom orders on contract. Caleb ran the ranch side, what cattle remained, the land itself, the infrastructure that held it all together. They ate together, planned together, divided labor according to skill instead of assumption. They didn't marry right away. There was too much work. Too much exhaustion. Too much history of desperation and lies that needed time to settle into something honest. Romance felt like a luxury neither of them had earned yet. But something grew anyway. Quiet. Rooted in shared exhaustion and mutual respect. On the way Mave left coffee for him before dawn. In the way Caleb repaired her tools without being asked. In conversations that moved past survival into possibility. Spring came slowly. The grass returned. 3 calves were born. Mave took on an apprentice, a young man from town who wanted to learn the trade. The forge expanded, a new shed built to house additional equipment. In late April, they stood together at the property line, looking out over land that had almost been lost. "It's not what you advertised," Mave said. Caleb looked at her. "No. You promised land, a roof, and a future," she said. "The land's half broken. The roof leaks. And the future's still uncertain." "I know," Caleb said. "I'm sorry." Mave smiled. "I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's different than expected." "Is that bad?" "No," she said. "It's honest." They stood quiet, watching the wind move through new grass. "We should probably make it official," Caleb said. "The ranch?" "Us." Mave turned to look at him fully. "Is that a proposal?" "If you want it to be." She laughed, a sound he'd come to recognize as rare and valuable. "Not your best work, Caleb Rourke." "No," he admitted. "It's not. But I'll take it anyway." They married in June, in front of witnesses who knew what they'd survived. No grand ceremony. No pretense. Just 2 people who'd chosen partnership over pride, work over fantasy. The forge burned bright that evening. Music played. People danced in the yard where foreclosure notices had once hung. Caleb and Mave stood together, watching. The ranch spread out around them, damaged but healing, broken but standing. Built not on luck or rescue, but on labor and honesty and the quiet strength of 2 people who refused to quit. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real. Thanks for listening to Caleb and Mave's story. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves a good Western tale. More stories of grit, survival, and second chances are coming your way. See you in the next one.